Amal Unbound by Aisha Saeed. Chapter 17, read for you by Mrs. Shoemaker. I trailed Mumtaz into the kitchen that featured a metal sink the size of a table. Fluorescent lights hung over counters that ran the length of the room. The windows against the far wall were cranked open, but the slight breeze did nothing to cool the hot, stuffy room. Just outside the window was a similar veranda for the servants, with some threadbare charpets and stools stacked against the wall. A girl who couldn't have been more than 9 years old chopped onions, but paused to smile at me. Next to her, a man with a gray mustache stirred 3 different pots. "The dishes," Mumtaz said, and pointed to a towering stack in the sink. "Start on those." I rested my suitcase by the door and walked to the sink. Pressing down the faucet, cool water rushed against my hands, a welcome reprieve from the stifling heat. "Officers gone?" the cook asked. "Left a little while ago," Mumtaz said. "I hate serving him food after they leave," he grumbled. "He finds something wrong with everything after they come." "I know. They've really been putting him on edge lately," Mumtaz said. "His father shouldn't have given him so much responsibility if he's going to be so thin-skinned." "If you think you have it bad, Hamid, think of Bilal," Mumtaz said. "Poor guy is with Jawad most of the day and has the bruises on his arms to prove it. Be glad you're mostly out of sight back here in the kitchen." "Never thought I'd say it, but I miss his father," the cook said. Mumtaz plucked cream-colored ceramic bowls and plates with gold trim out of the cupboards, while the little girl ladled chorley, beef korma, and saffron-scented rice onto the serving platters. "Can I help?" I asked when I had finished the dishes. Mumtaz nodded to a pile of kebabs resting on a plate by the stove. "Get the kebabs from Hamid and put them out on one of the flat trays." I arranged the kebabs on a platter and sprinkled them with chopped cilantro like I did at home. Mumtaz picked up a serving bowl and gestured for me to pick up the platter. "Come along," she said. After the gossip and banging pots in the kitchen, the main house was eerily silent. "At last she arrives," Jawad said when I entered the formal dining room and placed my platter on the sideboard next to Mumtaz's tray. He had no sunglasses on now, and his eyes bored into mine. I quickly looked away. His servant, Bilal, stood against the wall. He watched me curiously. "Enjoying it here so far?" Jawad Sahib continued. I couldn't move, rooted by his gaze. "Breathe," I reminded myself. I would not let him see me cower. "Not scaring the girl on her first day, are you?" said a woman as she entered the room. She wore a silk shalwar kameez, her gray hair swept up in a bun. Jawad Sahib leaned up and kissed her on the cheek. "You should thank her," he nodded to the woman. "My mother was in the car that day you ran into us. She's the only reason you're here at all. I had other ideas on how to handle your disrespect." His phone vibrated against the table, and his attention shifted. "Go." He waved his hand at me and picked up the phone. I hurried toward the kitchen. My mother always said the best way to feel better was to do something, anything, and she was right. Making myself useful had always helped. Nabila was lifting an iron pot from the stove and maneuvering it toward the sink. I moved to help her, but before I could offer, the pot slipped from her hands and crashed to the concrete floor. The noise pierced my ears. Bits of leftover food spattered along the ground and the adjacent wall. I grabbed a rag from the counter and leaned down to wipe up the mess. "Stop," Nabila said. "It looks worse than it is," I told her. "We can clean it up in a minute." "I took care of myself before you came, and I'll take care of myself when you're washed out and long gone." "Nabila!" Mumtaz chided. The rag hung limp in my hands as I stared at Nabila. She lifted the pot and rested it in the sink. How did I make an enemy within an hour of arriving? The kitchen began to fill up as the other servants filed in for their lunch. I recognized some of them, like Shagufta, the one who had been folding the laundry when I entered the servants' quarters earlier, and Gulam, the driver who had brought me here. I picked up a porcelain plate, but then I noticed the others grabbing metal ones from a separate cabinet. Their drinkware, too, came from a separate cupboard. I put the porcelain plate back down. I couldn't explain why it bothered me so much. It wasn't as if I ever ate out of anything much fancier than what was set aside for us here, but Parveen and Omar ate out of the same plates and drank from the same cups as we did. There was a clear dividing line here, and I had to understand where I stood. We could prepare the platters and wash the porcelain plates and glasses, but we could not eat from them. The young girl came over and held out an empty plate for me. "I'm Fatima. What's your name?" she asked. "My name's Amal." I took the plate from her. "Do you live here now?" she asked. "I guess. For a little while I do." "My father made this food. He's a really good cook. Khan Saeed pays him extra so he won't go anywhere else. The korma is one of his specialties." "I love korma," I said. I ladled some onto my plate. The roti was cold, but I didn't mind, as I was nearly dizzy from hunger. "His nahari is even better. He makes it for breakfast sometimes. I can get you some lemons for it when he makes it next. I know where he keeps them." "Fatima, come eat before everything gets even colder," her father called to her. I followed Fatima to the entrance of the room attached to the kitchen. The servants sat cross-legged in a circle on the floor. Fatima sat down next to her father. The plates rested on their laps. "Is it true?" asked the servant who had been carrying a broom earlier in the day. "She hardly seems the type to do such a thing." "She's here, isn't she?" Ghulam said between mouthfuls. "Kids these days like to mouth off. Don't care much for respect." "He let her off easy," Nabila said, looking at me. "If the rumors are true, he could have done worse." I walked back into the kitchen and rested my plate on the counter. I understood people talked about other people. I was guilty of it myself. But how could they say such things when I was right there? That's when I saw Jawad Sahib. He watched me from the kitchen entrance. "I had one question for you." Jawad Sahib smiled. "Was it worth it? The pomegranate you couldn't bear to part with?" I'd promised myself I wouldn't cry in front of him, but my body betrayed me. Hot, salty tears slipped down my face. I looked down and stood still. I did my best not to move. I stood still until he was satisfied, until he walked away. Chapter 18. After dinner, Mumtaz led me down a marble staircase onto the carpeted landing. The second floor was as big as the first floor. Nazreen Baji's room was the first one on the right, just after the landing. Stepping inside, I saw a white bedroom set with cream sheets. A matching white armoire and dresser were in the distance. A makeup table rested next to a closed bathroom door. Light glowed from beneath its slats. I followed Mumtaz into an attached room that turned out to be an enormous closet filled with Nazarene Baji's clothes and shoes. Through the closet we entered another room, rectangular and compact. The walls were a pale blue with a border of elephants and giraffes. "This is where you'll be staying," Mumtaz said. "Here?" I looked around at the nursery. "This is my room?" "There are many who would do a lot for a room in this part of the house. Now put your things away, and then meet Nazarene," she said before leaving. I thought of the stuffy, windowless concrete room from earlier today. Mumtaz was right. This room had air conditioning and a blue-tiled bathroom with a porcelain sink and chrome handles like I'd seen on television. I unpacked my suitcase and glanced at the door, wondering what lay in store for me on the other side. The light still glowed from beneath the closed bathroom door when I stepped back into her room. I glanced at my satchel. I'd forgotten to put it away, but I did need to call my mother just to let her know I was safe. I took out my phone, but a knock on the bedroom door made me jump. Jawad Sahib stepped inside. "Bored already?" he said, looking at my phone. Is this how it would be here? This man lurking around every bend and curve? I wanted to let my mother know I'm all right.
"Your obligations are to me now."
He grabbed the phone from me.
"The more you learn how to leave your backward ways behind, the easier things will be for you. Your days of being an idle farm girl are over."
Idle farm girl? Backward ways? I stared at my phone in his hands. My mother would tell me to be quiet right now and ignore these words. But how could he tear me from my home, take away the only connection I had to it, and then pronounce me backward? The words couldn't be stopped. I've never been idle. I went to school. I cared for my sisters. I helped my family. My voice broke.
"The ones you took away from me."
He looked at me as though watching a field mouse develop the skills of speech. His eyes narrowed. The bathroom door opened. "Jawad, what's going on?"
"I'm telling her how things will be."
"That's my job, isn't it?" She walked up to him. "If you take that away, what is there for me to do?"
"You're right."
He kissed her cheek. His anger from moments earlier vanished. They chatted a bit longer. He told her he was heading out now. Bilal was staying back this time. He asked her to keep an eye on him. He told her he would stop by her favorite sweet shop on the way home. He promised to call. And then he tucked my phone into his pocket and walked away, taking the one lifeline I had to my family with him. Nazarene Baji walked to her makeup table and sat down on the cushioned bench. I watched her, uncertain what to do. Did I ask her how I could help, or wait for her to tell me what she needed? Was I supposed to stand with my hands to the side, or folded in front? The list of things I didn't know was endless. I stood frozen by the door. Nazreen Baji tapped her fingers against the table and then glanced into the mirror. "I could use some help," she told me, and when I walked up to her, she nodded at the brush on the table. I picked up the wooden brush and parted Nazreen Baji's hair. I'd done this for my mother and sisters countless times, but never performed such an intimate task on a stranger. Nazreen Baji's hair was straight and brown with threads of gray. My mother's hair was black like the night sky, falling over her shoulders in waves. Last time I brushed my mother's hair, taking care to gently tease out the knots with my fingers, she hummed lullabies to Safa, who lay curled in her lap. Thinking of my mother kept my hands steady. "Did Mumtaz tell you what you are expected to do in this household?" she asked. "No," I told her. "You are here for me and anything I may need. You bring me my meals and wait on me. When there's company, you wait on all of us. You massage my head if it hurts and bring me my migraine medication. You will sleep with your door open, so if I need you, you can hear me. Understood?" I nodded. Before she could say more, the phone resting on the makeup table vibrated. "My husband." She picked up the phone. "Khan Sahib." I was so afraid of Jawad Sahib, I'd forgotten about his father, the monster in my childhood dreams, the boogeyman our mothers used to threaten us with when we were slow to finish our meals. He slept in this very room. "Thought you forgot to phone me," she said when he answered. "Ghazala called this morning. She switched her dinner party to next month for us. I told her we'll be there." She listened and smiled. "Yes, glad something can wrench you from politics." They spoke a little longer before she hung up. "He's away more than he's here, off with my eldest boys in Islamabad. Chasing politics at his age. Can you imagine? I tried to mask my relief. At least there was that. The man who haunted my childhood dreams was hardly ever here. "You must be missing your family," she said. "This can't be easy." Unlike her son's, her words contained no malice. I nodded. I can relate. Of course I married into the family, but no matter the circumstances, missing your family feels the same. You're from Nebe Chok, aren't you? Yes. I'm from Banway Chok. Banway? But that's a 10-minute walk from my house. It's on the other side of the market. True, she said. You know the Morali family? I nodded. The Morali family was a huge clan scattered over many nearby villages. That's my family. Now that she mentioned it, I could see the family resemblance in her straight dark hair and her high cheekbones. Najim and Sana were my classmates, I told her. My sister's children. Her eyes brightened. How are they? They're doing well the last time I saw them, I said. I've known them since I was 5. Smart girls. Khan Sahib will pay for college when the time comes. I'll make sure he does. Tell me, is Musad Baba still running the produce store at the market? He was my father's closest friend. Shakut, his son, runs it now. Shakut. Her expression fell. Well, that's a shame. He does a good job, I said. His prices are fair and he sells the best produce. Yes, I'm sure, she said. It's just I knew him when we were little. He had different dreams back then. I tried picturing Shakut as a child sharing his dreams with the woman in emerald earrings sitting across from me. I couldn't. But how did you end up here? Nasreen Baji began laughing. I stiffened. Why did I say that out loud? Blurting things out used to get me in trouble too when I was your age, she said. Just be careful. My son didn't inherit my sense of humor. Our marriage surprised many people, she continued. Khan Sahib's family is distantly related to the Morales. He saw me at a family wedding. His parents wanted a bride from a wealthy family, of course, but when you're the youngest, you get your way. Nasreen Baji told me about her family back in her village, and it turned out we had other neighbors in common. She was so easy to talk to, and the more she spoke, the less intimidated she seemed. It was the strangest thing to find within these walls someone who was more like myself than I could have imagined. For the first time since I arrived, I felt a little less afraid.